In the opening scene, we are presented with celebrity gossip run by Dan Buford. Immediately, he starts talking about the drama in her life, discarding her amazing success. Rumors that she's battling her manager Naomi Klein, her career, and even having troubles with her famous boyfriend Becker. Despite invading her privacy in the beginning, Dan reminds people that there will be a small but rather exclusive party for the success of Ivy's new album. Next, we see Ivy and Becker at a romantic dinner. Ivy Rose is a rather noticeable celebrity. Despite her beauty, she is recognized by her signature purple bob. Becker, on the other hand, is an attractive, handsome young man with sharp features. Paparazzi come to their table to take pictures, but Becker tells them off. Confused, she asks Becker why he told the paparazzi off when he loves the spotlight. Becker reveals that he wanted their night to be special because he wanted to do something. Taking her hand, he kneels, pulling a golden box out of his pocket. He gives a heartfelt speech about wanting to have a family with Ivy, but he ruins it all by asking Ivy to look to the side and say, "I've just been skunked." As if that wasn't enough, paparazzi storm in again to take pictures of the two. Naturally, Ivy gets upset, so Becker asks the paparazzi to leave. He knew Ivy wanted a normal life, but he admitted that the prank's goal was to show her that normal is boring. Them being the most famous people in the world, it won't be right for them to have a small proposal, but a rather extravagant one. Ivy has been feeling unsure of their relationship, and the prank has only confirmed that they're not meant to be. Before she leaves, she apologizes, but there is nothing she can do since it is unfair for both of them to be in an unfit relationship. The next morning, Ivy has a meeting with a record label. The two guys state that they're honored to be working with her, and Ivy thanks them for the kind words. However, when she asks whether she can take her wig off when she's working, they get harsh on her. For them, the wig represents a vibe that has to be maintained or people wouldn't be able to recognize her. Discarding the fact that Ivy wants some privacy, they move on to the next topic, which is Ivy's new album. Ivy expresses that she wants to have more control over the songs, but they decline her offer. Over at Deer Falls, we see Darren in his store with Karina when Cameron walks in. Excitedly, she reveals that she has 2 tickets to Ivy Rose's exclusive show and invites Darren to go with her. Despite not wanting to go, Karina assures him that she'll take care of the store, so he has no choice but to say yes. So we see them at the show. Sitting in their seats in the front row, Darren asks about Ivy since he doesn't listen to the music she makes. Tension can be felt backstage as Ivy asks whether she can sing some of her songs. Although she asks every time with hope, they crush her dreams by reminding her that she's supposed to do what she's told. As always, Ivy gets on stage and crushes it as the audience can be seen having the time of their lives. However, once she finishes the performance, she is surprised to see Becker climb on stage, with a bouquet in his hands. He admits to missing her, but instead of looking at her, he looks at the crowd. Ivy calls it disrespectful to ambush her performance, but the crowd goes wild. Cameron makes the crowd cheer Ivy despite Darren asking her not to, as he sees that Ivy's uncomfortable. Feeling overwhelmed, Ivy does the unthinkable. Pulling Darren out of the crowd, she asks him to kiss her, and even though he's confused, he kisses her. The crowd goes wild, mostly feeling bad for Becker and calling her Poison Ivy. Humiliated and shocked, Cameron leaves and Darren goes after her. Backstage, Ivy is scolded by her manager as she claims that her career is over, but Ivy doesn't seem to care. Leaving the concert place, Ivy is surprised to see Darren standing outside. She approaches him and apologizes for her actions, but he doesn't seem to be upset and even admits that it's the most fun he's had in a long time. He compliments her performance but lets her know that her lyrics aren't that good. Surprised to hear a critique, Ivy asks him not to be mean, but he justifies himself by revealing that he owns a record store in Deer Falls. Right as they're getting to know each other, Ivy's phone rings and ruins the vibe. Frustrated, she admits to being over her pop star lifestyle and wants to have a normal life with a normal job. Jokingly, Darren reveals that he knows just the place and invites her to his store if she's ever in Deer Falls. He doesn't know what kind of a situation he's gotten himself in as we see Ivy searching for places to stay at Deer Falls. While searching for a rental, Ivy keeps getting hateful messages from die-hard fans wishing her bad. However, she doesn't let it get to her and is destined to get away from it all. She finally finds the perfect rental, and so we see her the next morning in front of it. Getting out of her car, she puts her wig in her bag, letting her beautiful natural hair down. Entering the house, she is more than pleased to see the warm, homey vibe of it. Later on in the day, we see Darren and Karina at the record store. As Karina gushes over Darren's kiss with Ivy and shows him pictures of it, Ivy enters the store. However, they don't recognize her from the start, so Ivy pulls out her wig. Karina is shocked to see her idol in front of her, and Darren is surprised as well. Ivy starts going on about how nice Darren was to her and how he didn't want anything in return, which is unusual. She thought that Deer Hills was the perfect place for her to decompress and reconnect with her work. Nervous, Darren cuts the conversation short and goes back to work. Not finished with her point, Ivy asks Darren whether she can work at the store for free. Darren isn't up for it, but he sees that he won't get out of the situation if he doesn't agree, as the girls team up on him. Karina promises to help her and guide her, so Darren finally agrees. Ivy's absence is fastly noticed as her assistant enters her apartment but doesn't find her there. Rather than panicking, she is interested and wonders what Ivy's up to. Ivy's official first day at the record store comes as we see her entering the store. To avoid any attention, she asks Darren to refer to her as Jamie since it is her real name. She works with Karina for a while until a customer enters the store and Darren motions for her to take over. It is noticeable that Ivy hasn't worked in a record store as she asks the customer to introduce herself. Finally, the customer can say what she wants, and it is party night by the one and only Ivy Rose. Not knowing where the pop section is, Ivy asks Darren whether he can help the customer. However, not only does he reveal that they don't carry her album, but he also reveals that they don't have a modern pop section because he doesn't believe in pop music. As Ivy goes to the customer to reveal that they don't have the album, something scary happens. The customer almost recognizes that she is the one and only Ivy Rose, but luckily Ivy is able to discard it as her having a recognizable face. Not only is Darren having problems with the lack of customers, but he is also late on the payment for the store. As he's talking to his agent on the phone, Ivy walks in so she hangs up. Wanting to help, Ivy suggests she observes the store. It is a miracle that the store is still running since the new generations are only streaming music. To save the store, Ivy suggests they purchase the music that everyone's streaming, so they at least have something people want to buy. Darren reveals that operating the store has always been his collector's dream, and that's the reason he had kept it open for so many years. Wanting to be fair, Ivy offers a truce. She invites him to dinner as a way of thanking him for all the things he's done. Being the celebrity she is, Darren takes her to an expensive French restaurant, so it's up to her standards. Both of them don't seem to like the restaurant or the food there, so Ivy suggests they go get real food. Returning to her rental, they have a picnic in the backyard and enjoy some delicious cheeseburgers. As they're stuffing their faces, Darren asks about the reason for Ivy's coming to the town. Ivy admits to feeling like her life didn't belong to her, and that everything was about preserving tickets and record sales. Wanting to know more about him, Ivy asks about his personal life. Darren reveals that he's divorced. He and his wife got married after college, and as they grew up together, they realized they were heading in different directions. After the divorce, Darren opened the record store. As a boy, Darren used to hang out at one guy's apartment with his father, and they would listen to old records. As we know by now, the store isn't doing so well, so Darren thinks that the store could be revived only if someone like Miles Enderman would give a good review. Ivy suggests helping the store as all they need are a couple of changes. So, the following day, as Darren gets to the store, he is met with a surprise. A big sign with sale written on it stands in front of the store. Picking it up, he runs inside and reminds Ivy that they're trying to make more money and not lose it. Ivy argues back, saying that there are no customers to begin with, so the sale is marketing. Being optimistic, Ivy pulls out a box of cookies she had made and offers them to Karina and Darren. Luckily, there are no customers in the store to try the cookies because Karina claims that no one should have them. Already stressed out, Darren decides to close the door since there's no sale happening. Ivy decides to try other methods, but nothing seems to be right. From standing and yelling in front of the store to putting a golden ticket in one of the records, every idea gets shut down by Darren. Disappointed, Ivy tries to chat with Karina, but she decides to ask her something personal. Karina wonders what made Ivy change her authentic style of singing, what changed once she got famous. She has been a fan of Ivy since her YouTube days, so she wonders why the songs don't sound like her anymore. Ivy understands her completely. She reveals that the record label loves her look and voice, but when it comes to her ideas, they don't listen. Being stressed and rushed all the time, Ivy found it hard to write new music, which is why she came to the town, but unfortunately, she admits to forgetting her guitar. Karina jumps from her seat as she reveals that she has 2 guitars. That would be an honor for Ivy to play. It would be a great chance for her to reconnect and discover herself, and that's exactly what she tries to do. Sitting down with her guitar, she tries to come up with some ideas when her phone rings, and it's Becker. Declining the call, she gets back to work until a lawnmower starts working on the grass. Not having any other choice, she goes to Darren's and asks him if he wants to hang out. Walking around the town, Ivy asks Darren to take her to a thrift store. Darren admits to not taking her as a vintage girl, but Ivy reveals that all she used to wear in high school were vintage clothes. Looking through the rafts, Ivy finds some things she likes, including a hat with some flowers on it. After spending the whole afternoon at the store, trying on different pieces and combinations, Darren and Ivy return to the store only to see an eviction notice on it. Frustrated, Darren reveals that he will lose the store before he can sell it. Looking to the side, Ivy sees a picture of Darren and an old man beside him. Darren reveals that it was his father, who he lost in his senior year of high school. Ivy starts apologizing for asking, but he stops her and asks not to since he keeps his father's picture there to keep his memory alive. Relating to his story, Ivy reveals that she lost her mother a couple of years ago. Her mother had been supportive of her career, but Ivy feels like she's disappointing her as she's not good enough. Darren let her know that she was great and that it's normal to feel imposter syndrome sometimes. Changing the topic back to the store, Ivy asks Darren to trust her with her ideas, and he finally agrees. The next day, Ivy surprises Darren with some changes inside the store. In addition to the lights on the walls, Ivy has added a new music section, some apparel, and a stage for local artists. The most genius of all, she changed the name to Darren's Basement. Staring at it with shock, Darren admits to loving the new name and the meaning it. With the renovations ready for the reopening, they open the store to the public. Despite not having many customers, Darren believes in Ivy, so he lets her run the front while he's in the back office, and Karina is out for lunch. In walks a rather strange-looking man. However, he doesn't say anything, so Ivy decides to ask him whether he needs any help. The man finally speaks, as he asks whether the wood and the carpet are original. Ivy lets him know that they are and that they're made by Darren. Looking through the record players, he comes across Allman Brothers' 1973 bootleg, among many other classics that make up Darren's vintage collection. The man doesn't buy anything. He looks around and points out that the store doesn't have any customers before he leaves. As they're organizing the records and running some paperwork in the back, Ivy notices Karine writing in her book and asks her all about it. Karina is embarrassed to show her lyrics at first, but she finally gives in and lets Ivy read the book. Ivy is impressed, calling her book personal, raw, and authentic. She shares her new lyrics as well, but she's not met with the same reaction. Karina lets her know that the lyrics seem to be written by someone who's trying to seem authentic. Ivy had thought that writing similar lyrics to the ones from her YouTube days would be good enough, but Karina reminded her that she's not the same girl anymore. She has been through a lot of bad and good. Darren chimes in and asks Ivy how Jamie would feel about her career. Knowing that she's not a teenage girl anymore, Ivy asks Karina to help her write a song, and Karina couldn't be happier about it. They start practicing in the backyard, but Ivy doesn't seem satisfied. It is hard for her to focus because she isn't the teenage girl she used to be. Karina admits to them being different but reminds her that emotions are still the root of everything she does, and that is something that hasn't changed. Ivy agrees with her and jokingly asks whether she should write about a man. Karina immediately agrees, and even suggests writing about Darren since they seem to like each other. Later at the store, Karina finds out the big news. The store has been put on Popular Audiophile, a blog for vinyl record enthusiasts, by a review from the one and only Miles Enderman. Looking at the screen, Ivy yells out that he is the weird man that came into the store a couple of days prior. They read the article and at first compliments the aesthetic of it, and how the wood makes it seem like being in your buddy's basement in the 1970s. He later talks about the wide selection of new releases, as well as an eclectic mix of classical and hard-to-find vinyl. He finished the review by saying great things about Darren and the love he has put into the place. Not only have they gotten a good review, but their social media numbers have also tripled, reveals Karina. Darren hopes that they will finally get some customers, but it seems like he has spoken too soon as people rush into the store looking for their records. Unfortunately, Ivy's hideaway comes to an end as a picture of her pops up on Becker's feed, exposing her that she's in Deer Falls. He calls her manager Naomi to let her know, and we know that Distur is about to hit. However, Darren and Ivy enjoy the night sky on their usual picnic. Darren thanks her for everything that she's done for him as he reveals that he has gotten an offer on the store. He would have said yes a week ago, but now as the store is getting more and more successful, he's thinking about it. Ivy is glad to hear that and believes that Karine will be as well. She is glad that Karina is involved with the store, and Darren agrees, but he finds it rather annoying that she wants him and Ivy to date. However, he knows that she's a good kid at heart. Changing the topic, he asks her what's next. Ivy admits to not being sure, but Deer Falls has helped her reconnect and feel safe again. She is free and feels like it has become her home. Darren reminds her that she can always stay because she'll always have a house there. Feeling motivated in the morning, Ivy sits down and starts writing a song about her life in the town and how it has changed her for the better. At work, she is approached by Karina, who asks her how the process is going. With a huge smile on her face, Ivy admits that the lyrics have poured out of her heart as she hands the book to Karina. Reading the lyrics warms Karina's heart, as she claims that Ivy had finally found herself. The next day, Darren surprisingly decides to close the store in the middle of the day because he's feeling spontaneous. He suggests they have a barbecue, so they go to Ivy's house. We see them laying down on a beach bed when Ivy asks Darren what has gotten into him. Darren claims that it is a day of celebration because the store has 10,000 followers on social media, so he opens a sparkling cider for it. However, there's even better news as Darren reveals that the store is officially off the market. They clink their glasses in celebration when Ivy pulls out a bowl of cookies that look edible. In the evening, we can see the young ladies trying to find a landing for the song, but it seems like they're struggling. Karina suggests playing the song but in a more intimate manner, so we see them in the store ready to sing for Darren. However, Ivy feels like she's missing something, so she asks Karina to perform with her. Embarrassed, Karina admits to having stage fright, but Ivy assures her that she has nothing to worry about, as she reveals to having stage fright at the beginning as well. Karina finally agrees to give it a shot, so they start the beautiful song. As Ivy pours her soul out with her most personal song yet, Darren can for sure feel her words about him as tears fill his eyes. Finally ready to take a chance, he calls Ivy in the afternoon to ask her for a dinner date, so they settle on going to a restaurant around 7. As Ivy exits the door of the house, she gets surprised to see Becker standing in front of her. They sit down and he admits that his visits are just because he was worried about her. He apologizes for everything, every unformidable situation he has put her in, and begs her to come home. Ivy accepts his apologies but assures him that he deserves someone who is going to be just as excited for him, someone who enjoys his lifestyle. Surprisingly, he is respectful of her decision and asks her to take care of herself. Naturally, he asks her for a hug and she slides into his embrace. However, she doesn't know that Darren is watching them, and as he assumes the worst, he decides to leave, dropping the bouquet on the ground. Ivy waits for him to pick her up, but once morning comes, she decides to visit him. Darren lets her know that he saw her and Becker hugging, but she assures him that it hadn't been how it looked. Nonetheless, Darren admits to being crazy for thinking that she would ever stay in such a small town, and that it all seemed impulsive. He claims that she wasn't thinking about the future, and is sure that nothing can stop her from running away once again. Ivy tries to assure him that she would never run away and that it is serious for her, but he asks her to admit that it was just a vacation for her. Despite being hurt, Darren assures her that it's fine for her to have a vacation, but asks her not to lie to him since his whole life is in Deer Falls. Ivy swears that the past couple of weeks has meant a lot to her, and Darren claims the same, but he reveals to falling in love with Jamie, and not Ivy. He had decided to take the offer and sell the store. Ivy tries to change his mind, but he claims that he should focus on the future, rather than believing some made-up fairy tales about the store. Before he closes the door on her, he asks her not to come to the store again. Returning to the house, Ivy packs her bags and writes 2 letters, one for Karina and one's for Darren. As she's making sure that she's got everything, her manager Naomi comes in. As they're talking, Naomi asks whether she has done something wrong, so Ivy lets her know that she wants more control of her life and career. Knowing that she's right, Naomi apologizes and promises her a change in the schedule for the future. Not having a choice, Ivy packs her things and heads back with her manager. Later in the evening, Karina comes by for their writing session but finds no Ivy there. However, the owner hands her some stuff that Ivy left for her, among them being a letter. In the letter, Ivy thanks Karina for her talent and her willingness to work with her and asks her to take care of the stuff she's left. The next morning at work, she lets Darren know that Ivy has left town. Knowing that it would have eventually come to that, he claims to have been realistic when he had told her not to come to the store. He wants to move on with his life after he sells the store, but Karina is not up for that. She claims that Ivy coming to town was one of the best things that have ever happened to Darren. He had become happier, and the store was doing better than ever. Handing him the letter Ivy had left for him, she exits the store, giving him some privacy. In a very short but meaningful text, she thanks him for helping her find purpose and apologizes for not saying it in person. Everything goes back to the way it was as we see Ivy in her usual pop star self. She sits in a van, ready to get out and greet her fans, as well as sing a few autographs. Naomi notices that she's upset and assumes that she is because of Darren, so to make her feel better, she lets Ivy know that she has offered Darren a higher price for the record store. Ivy gets upset, as she thinks that Naomi had done it to get back at her, but Naomi assures her that it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. Getting out of the car, Ivy is met with adoring fans, but she only gets excited when she sees Karina in the crowd. Although she has come to get her album signed, Karina pulls out the notebook where they started writing their song and hands it to Ivy so she can finish it. Since it is their song, Ivy wants them to finish it together, so she decides to do as she pleases. Getting Karina into the car, she yells out to Naomi that she's fired, and the driver drives off to Deer Falls. As Darren gets out of his car, he sees Ivy in front of the store, so he decides to let her in. She has brought cheeseburgers for them to enjoy, just like they used to. She apologizes for forcing her life upon him, but he thanks her for it since it gave him a lot of hope. Naomi claims that she's ready to do everything not to let him down, and that's why she fired Naomi, because it was another way of her screwing his life up. Ivy doesn't want him to sell the store as it is a part of him. Getting his hands in hers, she lets Darren know that she wants to be with him, and he lets her know that he wants her to be there with him. Finally, he leans in and they share a sweet, yet passionate kiss. Karina and Ivy finally finish the song and we can see them performing to a small crowd. While singing the song, Ivy stares deep into Darren's eyes because every word resonates with their relationship.